Welcome back to another No Strings Attached. This is Colin with Eventide. We have a very special topic planned for you today, black hole with control voltage. Black hole is a coveted reverb effect for synth users, so much so that people have modded their Space and H9 pedals to be Eurorack compliant. That's right, I see you hackers out there. Now all you need to control the black hole in the CV domain is this handy module from Befaco, the CV thing. This will allow us to specify certain CC messages from whatever CV inputs we'd like. And it already outputs MIDI from a TRS connector, which is how the black hole and other .9 pedals receive MIDI from the expression pedal jack. All you'll need is a 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch TRS cable to make these two talk to one another. You'll need to set up black hole to receive MIDI from a MIDI box from the quick reference guide instructions as well. To celebrate this discovery, I figured a nice, relaxing, generative ambient patch was in order. I'm going to rip out all of the modulation signals from this patch and show you the sequence at its bare bones so we can build it up together. This patch is being driven by the Endorphins running order, which is a 2-channel gate sequencer. Channel 1 is advancing our pitch sequence from the mutable stages on these last 3 segments, and the output of that is going into the volt per octave input of the Endorphins Godspeed Plus oscillator, which is an FM tone generator. The second channel of the running order is opening and closing a Buchla style low pass gate from the Endorphins Squawk Dirty filter. And this is run into the Euro DDL for a tempo synced delay. Decent amount of feedback and a low pass filter on the delay to give that a little more nuance and depth. Now let's add black hole. This already sounds much more suitable for our ambient generative patch, but when you're talking about people whose catharsis is listening to ambient music, we want to give them something which is going to be interesting to focus on particular elements. So what are some things that we can make variable in our patch that are going to keep things interesting? I want to talk about 3 things in particular related specifically to time-based effects like reverb and delay. And those would be tone, right? If you change up the brightness or overall character of the tone going into the reverb, you're going to activate it in a different way, and that will carry over in different sorts of textures. The second thing would be the overall sustain or release of the sound. If you lengthen shorter sounds, you'll get a blooming effect when it enters the reverb. And then the third thing would be sparseness of the overall patch. We want to make sure that the elements will have room to breathe. And so we may want to space things out in how we activate and use the reverb in this patch. So before we start changing things up on black hole, we can employ those first 2 tactics on the basic patch itself. I'm going to start out by using one of the LFOs from the stages here, and I'm going to run it into the FM input of the Godspeed Plus. This is going to add more harmonic character to it, depending on the LFO's position. And I'm going to use this for multiple things, so I'm just going to mult that out now and run the first input into the further generator. And I'm going to take the second copy of that and run it into the release of the low pass gate. already we can hear a difference in how the reverb is being activated by our basic patch with our now variable tone. This is something that we can definitely build upon. So on that third note of sparseness, I think this is a perfect segue to start programming the black hole. One way that we can open up this patch and leave room is to only allow certain notes into the reverb buffer. And we can do this by toggling active bypass. Since I have the pedal set up in DSP plus effects for the bypass type, the reverb tail will carry over even when the pedal isn't active. And to see how you need to set the pedal up in this way, you can refer to the quick reference guide that comes with your pedal, or you can download that as an asset from the docs and download page on the product page on our website, and you can keep it handy on your phone. It also has the MIDI information, so you can look up the specific CCs that you need to send when programming the CV thing. So input 1 on this is already programmed to CC14, which is active bypass, and a CC value of 64 or greater will toggle active. So I'm just going to use this LFO from the stages and run that into input 1. Now we're leaving room for things to breathe in this space. Back on the note of variable sustain, we can use the black hole to trigger a buildup effect by using an LFO on the feedback of the reverb structure. When feedback enters the upper range, you will enter infinite sustain, which will allow more information into the buffer, and then at the very top, freeze, which will kill any input to the reverb and keep the reverb frozen as a static texture. I want to mostly operate in that upper range, so I'm just going to quickly take a copy of this LFO and run it into a VCA. Okay, I'm going to send a static voltage into this from an attenuator. And when I plug it into the CV thing, we should have that LFO modulating with a higher center point in the range. And I'm going to change this CC value to 22, which is the feedback. So now we should be able to identify a couple of different things about this patch in terms of the reverb character. There are notes conditionally entering the reverb buffer, and then of those notes, there are some which are conditionally being frozen at a different rate of change. Now let's change up something on the reverb character itself. I want to slightly modulate the size of the reverb over time. And I'm going to do this by quickly setting up a sample and hold with the stages. Sampling this LFO. And I'm using a high slew rate on the sample and hold because I don't want the size to change too drastically. Let me just make sure that's the proper CC value. It should be 23. If I lower the slew value, we'll be able to hear some more of that drastic change, and if that's your thing, that's totally fine too. I just want that little shift from time to time. Now all you need to do is sit back and let your patch play out. I hope you enjoyed this hands-off approach to performing with the black hole reverb effect. That's going to do it for this video. We'll see you in the next one.